The morning after the press conference, headlines exploded again, but this time with my name. Bransford heiress exposed. Ava Catherine Bransford steps into the spotlight. Not everyone was clapping. An emergency board meeting was called. I arrived at the Bransford Executive Tower, the weight of my unborn child and entire legacy on my shoulders. Inside, tension crackled like a live wire. Daniel stayed beside me, silent but solid. Gregory Bransford, Daniel's uncle and longtime rival to his father, stood at the head of the boardroom. "You think a name change and a speech earns you a crown?" he barked. "This isn't a family drama, it's a billion-dollar empire." I didn't blink. Then maybe it's time the empire remembered who helped build it. A folder slid across the table. Gregory's smile was sharp. "Your mother was written out of the trust. You were never named. Legally, your claim is, shaky." I opened the folder. Legal jargon. Historical trust records. Redactions. But I'd come prepared. I pulled out another document. "Then let's talk about this." Gasps echoed. It was a notarized joint agreement between Catherine Bransford and Richard Monroe signed before her exile, naming me her successor should she be stripped of rights. A legal backdoor. Gregory turned pale. Daniel leaned forward. "Still want to talk legacy?" Silence followed. The tide had shifted again. Later that night, I returned to the estate library, Catherine's favourite room according to the letter. A place of secrets. I searched for hours, brushing away dust, flipping open locked drawers, and then I found it. A flash drive tucked into the lining of an old book titled Family and Fortune, The Bransford Way. I plugged it in. Video files. Dozens. All dated nearly 2 decades ago. Footage of Catherine speaking directly to the camera. She documented everything. How she was forced out, how the board manipulated shares, how Gregory led the charge against her, and, most shocking, how Catherine warned that if anything happened to her, it wouldn't be an accident. My heart pounded. I had proof, not just of my legacy, but of a crime. I turned to Daniel. "We're not just rewriting the story, we're reopening a case." He nodded, jaw tight. "This time, they won't silence her." The next morning, I took the footage to the Bransford legal team. Men I once feared. Now they answered to me. But before any action could be taken, I got a call from the estate's security. "There was a break-in. Your office was ransacked." We rushed back. Papers shredded. Drawers forced open. The flash drive? Gone. But the files were backed up. I wasn't stupid. Still, someone inside the house was working against me. I called an emergency meeting, only with those I trusted. Daniel, his father, the house manager, and 2 of the staff who had worked during Catherine's time. One name kept surfacing. Lillian Bransford, Daniel's cousin. Quiet, polished, brilliant, and dangerously loyal to Gregory. That night, we confronted her. She didn't deny it. "You don't belong here," she spat. "You're a walking threat to everything we built." I stepped closer. "You mean the lies you built," she smirked. "Let's see how much longer you last." But I already had the upper hand. I sent the files to 3 major news outlets before sunrise. Even if they destroyed everything else, Catherine's voice would still be heard. A month later, subpoenas were served. Gregory, Lillian, and 2 board members were indicted for fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction related to Catherine's exile. The trial gripped the nation. Daniel and I sat behind the prosecution, flanked by attorneys and press. I testified, so did Richard's attorney. And then, an unexpected witness, Daniel's grandfather. He stood slowly, voice hoarse. "I made mistakes," he said, "but I never signed off on Catherine's removal. Gregory forged documents. Lillian carried out the plan. And I let it happen." He looked at me. "She was my daughter, and I let the family destroy her." Tears filled my eyes. Redemption. Too late, but real. The jury didn't take long. Guilty, on all counts. And as the verdict echoed through the courtroom, I clutched Daniel's hand. Justice had a face now. Catherine's. 2 weeks after the trial, I was summoned to a private reading of a revised Bransford family will. Updated before Gregory's arrest, the attorney, a no-nonsense woman in grey, sat across from us. This was written by the patriarch, Daniel's grandfather, shortly before the trial began. She slid over the documents. In it, Catherine was officially reinstated as a Bransford heir, posthumously. And everything that had once been hers was passed on to me. Land, stocks, the original shares in the Bransford Trust. The room spun. Your child, the attorney added, will inherit full rights upon birth. The bloodline is restored. I didn't feel powerful. I felt complete. It wasn't about the money. It was about identity. Catherine wasn't erased. And neither was I. The contractions started just before dawn. Daniel rushed me to the private hospital wing built for the Bransfords. No press, no reporters, just us. Hours later, with the sunrise bleeding gold over the horizon, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. We named her Catherine Grace Monroe Bransford. 3 names, 3 legacies. As I held her, tears sliding down my cheeks, I whispered, "You'll never have to fight for your place like I did, but if you do, you'll win." Daniel sat beside me, awe in his eyes. "She's everything," he said. I nodded. "And she's just the beginning." Outside, the world still spun with gossip, power plays and secrets. But in that moment, peace. A new generation had arrived, and this time, the legacy would be written in truth. 3 weeks after Catherine Grace was born, I wandered into a room I'd never dared to enter before, the Bransford Portrait Room. Paintings of Bransford's past loomed over marble floors. Each face stared down with cold pride. Founders, financiers, diplomats, and then, there she was. Tucked into a dark corner, nearly hidden behind a ficus, Catherine Bransford, my mother. Her portrait was older, the paint chipped slightly, but her eyes matched mine, clear, unflinching, alone. I stood before it, baby Grace resting quietly in my arms. "They buried you in a corner," I whispered, "but they'll never hide you again." I called the estate curator the next day. Her portrait was moved front and centre. The family wasn't pleased, but it wasn't their choice anymore. When the updated portrait was unveiled, I stood beside it in a white suit, my daughter in my arms, flanked by Daniel and his father. "This is where she belongs," I said. The silence said more than applause ever could. As trustee, I began reviewing more than just financials. I reviewed people. Emails, correspondence, hidden accounts, and slowly, a web began to form. A secret network of former Bransford associates, people who had been loyal to Gregory and Veronica, people who weren't done. Daniel warned me. "You've exposed them, but snakes don't die in daylight. They wait for shadows." I started receiving anonymous texts. "We know where you sleep. Should have stayed the Monroe girl." At first I ignored them. Then Grace's nursery camera glitched, twice in 1 week. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I met with Daniel's father and arranged new security protocols, armoured cars, guards, encryption, decoys. But I knew this wasn't about fear. It was about endurance. They wanted to make me run. Instead, I planted my heels even deeper. "You want to shake my house?" I whispered into the mirror. "Then be ready for the storm that comes after." Months passed. The board was reshaped. Corruption weeded out. Properties audited. But my greatest project had nothing to do with the Bransford estate. It was the Catherine Foundation, a scholarship trust for young women exiled by their families, silenced by power, disowned for love. Grace gurgled in her stroller beside me as I broke ground on the first campus. Reporters asked why I was investing in something so far from the Bransford name. I looked at them calm, steady, clear, because money fades, but stories shape generations. My mother's story was nearly erased, so now I'm building a place where no one's truth will ever be buried again. Daniel stood behind the cameras, eyes shining with pride. Later that night, rocking Grace to sleep, I whispered, "They'll never silence us, sweetheart. Not your mother, not your grandmother, and certainly not you." As the moonlight cast silver shadows across the nursery, I knew. The Bransfords hadn't just inherited a name, they had inherited a reckoning. and her name was Catherine Grace.